A very warm welcome and a good evening to you from the Buddhist Mahavihara's Facebook page. We are here at the Buddhist Mahavihara's Dhammadana series. And this evening we have a monk who is actually based in Canada but currently is in Sri Lanka because of the COVID situation. And Bhante will be talking about the Avakujja Sutta, which is a discourse that the Buddha had explained on the three types of listeners of the Dhamma. As you know, we have been now listening to Dhamma talks and sermons by renowned speakers throughout the last 7 to 8 months, and I guess we didn't realize that there are different types of listeners to the Dhamma, and the Buddha has actually explained the three different types of listeners of the Dhamma. And this evening we have Bhante Kotawawe Suseela Thera, as I mentioned earlier, who is actually based in Canada but currently is based in Sri Lanka, who will be the speaker this evening. I would like to invite Bante to come online. Good evening, Bante.
Good evening, Miss Leslie.
Welcome to the Buddhist Mahavihara's Facebook page, and we are going live this evening. And you will be talking on the Avakujja Sutta. And before we start Bante's sermon, let me just briefly introduce Bante to our audience. Bante Kotaveya Susila is a meditation teacher and spiritual advisor who has lived in North America for almost a decade. Currently, he's the spiritual director and abbot for both the Alberta Insight Meditation Center (AIM Center) and the Manitoba Buddhist Vihara in Canada. He also serves as the Buddhist chaplain at the University of Alberta and the Northern Alberta Institute of Technology, which are based in Canada. So this evening, as I mentioned, Bante will be talking on the Avakujja Sutta, and without much ado, I would like to invite Bante to start this evening's Dhamma sharing. Bante?
Good evening, dear Dhamma friends. It is time to listen to Dhamma, and I'm really glad that I was invited to give this talk this evening by Mr. Leslie. So I'm grateful to the Buddhist Mahavihara and the organizers who are really dedicating this valuable time towards you, even during this pandemic situation. The current situation is around the world is really, really bad. And there is no any clue how long we have to stay with this. But whatsoever, we cannot lose our Dhamma practice. We cannot let it go. So therefore, this is really appreciated, which is organizing this program by Buddhist Mahavihara to provide, to enhance your Dhamma knowledge without breaking it up during this period. We know we have less possibility to meet venerable monks at the temples this time. So this was happening from March this year and until today, and there's no guarantee for the future. Predictors say this will run up to 2 to 3 years. However, in my understanding, this is the time that we can use our life very wisely. So therefore, I'm really glad that about this topic today, because today we are going to talk about various types of Dhamma listeners. We usually listen to Dhamma, and it's a passion. We would like to listen to different teachers and different methods from these teachers. Even though we are listening to different teachers, this Dhamma basically delivered by the Buddha. Knowingly that we listen to different teachers. Sometimes we talk about teachers. Today, we are focusing on students, listeners, followers. This teaching, the reference that we have taken today, this teaching is coming from the original text of the Buddha, and this contains in the numerical discourse of the Buddha, the third book of thirds in numerical discourse. Before we go about these listeners, to set up the background, I would like to spend few more minutes to describe about the Dhamma. One day, a monk came to the Buddha and asked, Bhante, there are so many preachers. They teach Dhamma. They teach Dhamma, and there are so many listeners. Then how we could understand about this differentiates of these teachers and Dhamma, especially Dhamma listeners? Buddha said there are four types of people, groups of people who teaches and who listens. The first group is the teacher, the preacher, preaches a little and it is meaningless. The listeners are unable to understand the meaning of that teaching. They don't have enough wisdom to understand it. Among that people, among that listeners, that teacher also a teacher or a preacher. Then the second type of preacher, he or the person, the preacher, the teacher, teaches, talks about and talks a lot, lengthy talks. And there are people, listeners, who are having lack of knowledge of understanding what he meant, what he taught. Simply that teacher teaches a lot, but listeners also are having lack of understanding, wisdom to understand that teaching. Among that people, that teacher also a teacher, because both parties is meaningless. The third teacher, the teacher teaches a little. It's meaningful. And the listeners also capable of understanding what he taught, what he meant. Among that people, among that listeners, that teacher is a teacher. Then the fourth one is the teacher teaches a lot and it is meaningful, and listeners are capable of realizing the meaning of it, and they have the wisdom to understand what he meant, what he taught. Then that teacher also a teacher among that people. So those are the four types of teachers and listeners. So today we are going to talk about the three qualities of a listener. Three qualities or three types of persons of Dhamma listener. That's why I put the topic as various Dhamma listeners. different Dhamma listeners. To be clear with this, usually we cannot expect from everyone to understand the teaching equally. It never happens. So therefore, we better understand the variousness of these listeners. That will help us to realize who am I? Who am I? Because I know some people have hard time to understand them. Some people understand very quickly, and some people never understand. Some people need more details to understand them. So therefore, various listeners are included in this Dhamma because no one is perfect. No one is perfect, and everyone has some differences. So therefore, these listeners have categorized into three groups in this sutra, but there are many other sutras that Buddha taught by describing this matter. But in this sutra, he talks about a three type of people. So let's go with that listeners one by one. The first one, the first listener, the person with inward wisdom. Before we go with the details, just look at this picture, image. Inverting means put the upside down. So the person who is having inward wisdom, that means his wisdom is downward and it is not upright. The wisdom is completely upside down. Simply, it is closed. His mind is not open to the Dhamma. That's why it calls Avakujja. So, there are few qualities of this listener. I have put them here in the slide, if you could see it clearly. The first thing is he or the person, the listener, frequently visits the monks. The listener frequently, often goes to the temple. Don't we have that type of people? They just go to the temple and they pay attention. They pay attention. And monks are capable of teaching the deep Dhamma, which is meaningful in the beginning and the middle and the end. The monks teach meaningful Dhamma, which is leading to the liberation, Nibbana, describing the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. And this listener is sitting in front of the monk, preacher, but that person does not pay attention to the Dhamma. The teacher teaches well, very clearly and profoundly, but the listener is there, but his attention is not there. His attention is not there. How this happens? Because our body is there, physically we are there, but mentally we aren't. So therefore, we go to the temple, we associate the monks, teachers, and we ready to listen, but while we are listening, our mind is here and there. Maybe we go shopping, we go picnic, and maybe we go to sleep, and there's no attention or there's no attentiveness towards the teacher or the Dhamma. Then what happens? We don't pay attention, and the Dhamma will not remain with the person. The number 4, and Dhamma is not uh, remaining there because he does not learn anything. He didn't learn anything. It doesn't remain with him. He just leaves the temple. The metaphor, the simile that Buddha gave to describe this type of people is very clear. So if you see this picture, I just tried to combine these two pictures here. The pot, it has upside down the pot. Then we pour water on it. What happens? That pot never fills because it is upside down. Water never gets into the pot. That's a simile, that's a metaphor to introduce this Avakujja person, or the person with the inward wisdom. And I have met number of people like this, and we just teach, but that person just keep listening, but nothing remains. Everything flows away, blow away. So that the simile for that type of person. And if I share this story as well, there are a number of people who listen to the Buddha. One day, 4 people came to listen to the Buddha. One person was uh, holding a branch of a tree, and he was just shaking it while listening to them. There was another person who was looking at the sky and just looking at the stars. The other person, he was just drawing lines on the floor, on the ground. The other person, the 4th person, was listening to the Dhamma. There are 4 meanings of that people. The person who was shaking the branch of the tree, it says that person was a monkey in the previous life. That previous habits come to be here with him. And the person who was watching at the stars, that person was a astrologer in a previous life. The person who was drawing lines on the floor, ground, it says that person was a worm in a previous life, and as a habit, habitually they were doing it. And the 4th person was listening to the Dhamma. He was a good listener and good student or pupil in a previous life as well. So therefore, this type of people we meet for this teaching. So let's go to the next one. And next one is the second person about this Dhamma listening. The second person is Uchanga Panya. Uchanga Panya is defined as the person with lap-like wisdom. That's how these translators translate it. The person with lap-like wisdom. Let's go with the details first, then we can understand the person's behavior here. Frequently visits the temple, or this person frequently visits the monks. So then he listens good Dhamma. Monks are capable of teaching and they profoundly explain deep Dhamma. Dhamma is meaningful at the beginning and the middle and the end. And the specification of this person is this person pays attention to the Dhamma while listening. When monks are teaching, this person pays attention from the beginning, middle, and the end. He has a good attentiveness to listen to Dhamma. So what's wrong with this person then? It says in the number 4, he listens and he gets the idea, but this person does not use the Dhamma in the real life. In the real life, this person does not use the Dhamma. Simply, this person does not apply the Dhamma or does not live according to the Dhamma. And when the person gets up, all the Dhamma just drop out from his lap. So look at this picture here, and we sit down to listen the Dhamma in a sitting posture. We listen and we pay attention, but when we got up, we drop all the Dhamma from the lap. That's why this calls Uchanga Panya. Uchanga means lap in Pali. Then this person has a good attention, but nothing remains with this person. He just listen to it and just drop it out and leave the place. Nothing in the application. Then the metaphor for this person is lap-like wisdom person. Then the third person calls in Pali Putu Panya. Putu means wide, broad. Panya is wisdom. The person with wide wisdom, he has a broad wisdom. And the other 2 people have narrow wisdom. Then third person calls Putupanya, the person who is having a broad understanding and he can understand well. The same quality is for this person as well. This person visits the temple, associates the monks, and listen to the Dhamma. Monks also are capable of teaching Dhamma very profoundly. They can explain it very well. And the person has a very clear understanding, and the person is completely capable of paying attention, and he has a good attentiveness from the beginning and the middle and the end. The person is having a clear wisdom. Then this person applies this Dhamma in the life, in the real life, according to the teaching. He practices, he applies, and that person uses the Dhamma in the real life. The metaphor for that, just look at this picture. The pot is upright. We can pour water and the water remains there. Then this Putupanya person, the person with the white wisdom, that person contains the Dhamma, and that person learns the Dhamma, and he can practice it, and that person calls Putupanya. So this person take himself to or herself to the liberation by listening to this Dhamma. Because this is the great wisdom. This person has the great wisdom and wisdom enough to understand and realize the sacred words of the Buddha. Therefore, this is a third type of person who listen the Dhamma. So then we talk three type of listeners. The first one is who's having the inward wisdom, which is upside down wisdom. And the second one is lap-like wisdom. He listens to Dhamma, but when gets up, all drops out. And the third person is Putupanya with the wide wisdom, and that person has the ability of understanding and realizing and applies the Dhamma and practice it well and leads himself to the liberation. That's a third person. So I have a question for my listeners today. Let's see what it is. Here it is. Now, before I stop this for questions from the audience, I would like to ask you, what is your position? What is your position according to this teaching? According to this teaching. You can think of it. Number one, number two, or number three. If you are in the number one group, at least you had to try to take yourself towards the number two. If you are capable of taking yourself to the number three, that's much better. But if you could, even if you could take you to the number two, that is better, because even you have the ability of listening. Then accordingly and gradually, you can go to the number three as well. But this is to understand ourselves, not to run away. We cannot run away from this. This is to understand who am I. Who am I? I have met many people who's having really hard time to understand not only Dhamma, anything sometimes. there are some people who's having really good understanding. So therefore, I would like to mention and I would like to bring another uh, way of teaching to get your attention for this. I humbly request you all, if you have lack of attention to the Dhamma while listening, don't give up. Don't give up, because you have to keep doing it. Doesn't matter whether you understand or not, because we are having a really valuable time in this very life. So therefore, even though we don't understand, it's better to listen to the Dhamma. And one day we will be able to understand, make it sense. So therefore, if we give up listening the Dhamma in this life by uh, bringing up different type of reasons, if you try to rationalize, justify this, and if we try to just slip away the chance of listening to Dhamma, what will happen to us according to the karma, we will lose the listening the Dhamma in the next life as well. Whenever we have a rebirth as a human, we will lose the opportunity of listening to Dhamma. Then we should not create any inopportune moments in our life, because we are having a really opportunity, having a good time to listen to Dhamma. So therefore, let's understand this. We should not lose this moment. So here are the three types of listeners, and I just provided the details and according to the teachings. And I would like to open the audience, and I would like to open myself to the audience. If there is any concern or any question or anything, any thought that you have to share with me. So I have a question. What sort of application are we talking about here in the sutra? So in this very specific sutra, there is no uh, any application here, but this implies and this teaches us to understand ourselves as Dhamma listeners, because we listen the Dhamma to realize the life, realize the wisdom. This is not for fun. Listening to the Buddha's teaching is not a fun activity. This is to realize the life, the meaning of the life. So therefore, if we begin to apply even a single Dhamma that we have learned, that we have listened, that's worth than the other thousands of things. So therefore, in this sutra, it talks about the various types of people, and we have listened the Dhamma. It's up to us to apply the Dhamma accordingly. Right. So if a person drops the Dhamma from his lap as he gets up, how could we retain it to be practiced? So then that person has to listen again. If that person does not remain or remember the Dhamma, then that person has to visit the teachers again, then get the teaching and has to uh, understand the Dhamma and go to the practice. So here's the thing with this. I know sometimes when we listen to the Dhamma, but we don't understand. Even these people who are wise, but they don't understand sometimes, and they have to visit again. Then they have to listen for the second time, for the third time, maybe hundred of times. It doesn't matter. And we come back to the teacher and get the understanding from the teacher. And we are taught, we are asked to teach no matter what. We are asked to provide the teachings, even a listener come to thousands of times to us, we have to teach. It doesn't matter how many times the person asks the same question. So then we have to teach. So therefore, if not remain the Dhamma from the person, and that person has to visit and get the Dhamma back. It is not useless. It is not useless listening the same Dhamma again and again. There are so many benefits of listening the Dhamma again and again. Same Dhamma.
Thank you, Bhante. The last two questions were actually from Dr. Sunil from the UK. He's a regular listener and he's also a regular speaker here at the Buddhist Mahaviharas Dhammadana page. I hope, Dr. Sunil, you are satisfied with the answers given by Bhante Suseela. Bhante, I have one question. You mentioned that, depending on the type of teacher who preaches the Dhamma, for you to be able to understand is one criteria, important criteria. The other one is also the listener himself. I noticed that when you read the scripture, sometimes there are instances where people attain, so different stages of jhana or sotapanna or aranship almost instantaneously. And I think that was also due to because of practice over many lifetimes, for them to be able to understand the Dhamma and attain, enlightenment in such a quick time, as opposed to somebody who is, as you mentioned, not paying attention or even paying attention and not being able to practice or understand. So are these factors critical in listening to the Dhamma? Uh, when we listen to the Dhamma?
Well, it depends. Actually, yes, there are some reasons that we bring from the previous practice and previous lives that we call perfections, that we have to fulfill our perfections during this journey. And my understanding is if we have the Dhamma, if we have the good Dhamma, which is really focusing on Four Noble Truths and focusing on the Eightfold Path, and which is leading to the liberation and the direct, that called direct Dhamma. And if a person has capability of understanding it, that means that person has trained himself in the previous lives as well. And that converts and that talks, that describes as a karma as well. If you have seen that the short division of the karma, sutra in middle length of discourses, that calls, there's a pair of question that calls a person is having lack of understanding, lack of wisdom, and the other person has great wisdom. The person who's having lack of wisdom means that person has not discovered or searched for the good Dhamma in previous lives, as he was uh, the first type of person, and that person has not looked for a good teacher to train himself to understand wholesome and unwholesome, and as a karma of his behavior that came and that followed him up to this level, and that person has hard timing with understanding of Dhamma. And the other person who's having great wisdom, that person has really, really understanding of the Dhamma. That person has seek for the Dhamma, searched for the Dhamma, and discovered the Dhamma which is unknown to him, and he has known the Dhamma. Now he has the wisdom in this way life as well. And even as you mentioned, yes, that even during the Buddha's time, when Buddha taught, the listeners, the monks and the lay people, attain to the four stages of this practice, which is stream enterer and once returner, nonce returner, and the arahantship. So by one sermon, there were many people who are reaching this uh, several stages of this enlightenment path. That also their capability of listening the Dhamma and practicing Dhamma from previous lives and even attend to the jhanas. Also, sometimes we don't meet with teachers. Sometimes we don't. But teachers are very famous. They are capable of preaching, but meaningless. Some teachers are not famous and they're not in public, and they teach a little, but it is meaningful, and they can provide great wisdom, great knowledge to the people who are seeking for the wisdom. So therefore, there are different shades of this as well. And this Dhamma need to be complete in several stages to understand it, even from the teachers. And some teachers are really capable of teaching, and they are capable of providing the good Dhamma as well. Let me tell this too. When when Buddha passed away after the cremation, one of the monks named Channa. Channa was the supporter or minister for the Prince Siddhartha when he was the ruler. And that Channa became a monk. He ordained himself. Then he was having a hard time with understanding the Dhamma because he was holding the pride and saying, I was with the Buddha, with the Siddhartha when he was leaving the palace, and this type of the ideas. But when Buddha passed away, he wanted to understand the Dhamma, and he went to, he met different teachers, and he went to the monks and requested, Bhante, teach me. And they all taught. But what happened, he said, oh, they don't know how to teach. Even I don't understand what they say. Then he just passed a couple of teachers, and he suddenly reminded Venerable Ananda is still alive, and he is a person that Buddha also has appreciated with a great wisdom. I should visit him. Then he went to the Venerable Ananda, and he requested Venerable Chandan requested to Venerable Ananda. He taught the Dhamma. It's so interesting because Venerable Ananda also taught the same Dhamma as the other teachers taught to Venerable Chand. They all taught about five aggregates. But Venerable Chanda did not understand the meaning, what they meant from their teachers. But Venerable Ananda taught the same teaching, and he has the faith towards him. Therefore, he understood the Dhamma when Venerable Ananda was said, and he attained to the Arahanthood.
Okay, thank you, Bhante, for that explanation or to my question and that interesting story about Channa. Yeah, I think the important thing here is to find sometimes a teacher. Sorry, is to find a teacher who or a Dhamma preacher who can actually understand his student or his listener and try to cut the cloth accordingly, as they say, so that the student can listen, can understand easily. Same goes for educational institutions here. Sometimes the teacher just teaches, and the students don't pay attention because they don't seem to appreciate the subject. All depends on the teacher at the end of the day how he makes it interesting and relevant to the listener. So I guess Dhamma speeches around the world have also got to learn that art of teaching. I guess the Buddha was the teacher extraordinaire. He was able to judge his audience. Bhante, there is a question, but it's got no relevance to this evening's sermon. But I think I don't know whether you would like to just try to answer this as well. It's from Brother David.
Some people change their religions due to marriage. What is your comment? Well, that's a personal choice, David. Uh, I don't actually personally I don't worry about it, and that's a personal choice, and they all have the freedom to change their denomination. Even for me, I have trained myself not to ask a person's denomination faith. So that's a personal choice.
Oh, Brother David, I hope that short answer from Bhante is sufficient for you to comprehend the answer. So we've actually come to the end of this evening's Dhamma sharing. And thank you, Bhante, for this excellent sharing. Just for our listeners, Bhante will be back with us on the 25th of December again, on Christmas Day. And Bhante will be actually exploring another uh, Dhamma sermon. Oh dear, I don't have the topic on me at the moment. Oh yeah, I do. Sorry, give me a minute. It is the Avaranata Sutta. Yeah, it is a how to listen to the Dhamma actually, right? How we should listen to the Dhamma, and Bhante will actually be talking to us on this subject on the 21st, which is on Christmas Day. So those of you who are not doing anything, can't go anywhere, and do join us on Christmas night at 8:30 p.m. for Bante's next sermon. And before we end this evening's Dhamma sharing, I would like to invite Bante to do the Anumodana. Please, Bhante.
So let us share all these accumulations with all beings who are really wishing to partake our accumulations. Especially, it is better to share these blessings and merits with all beings who are really suffering from this pandemic during this situation and during this time. And let's make a great wish. By the power of this accumulation, may all beings be well, happy, and healthy, and may all beings be safe. And may all beings who are really expecting these merits and may partake it and fulfill their wishes. आकाशट्टा च बुम्मट्टा देवानागा महिद्दिका पुण्यं तं अनुमोदित्वा चिरं रक्षन्तु शासनं चिरं रक्षन्तु देशनं चिरं रक्षन्तु मं परन्ति इदं मे ज्ञातीनं होतु स्थिता हन्तु ज्ञातयो. By the power of this accumulation, we all may be able to overcome this samsaric cycle, finally attain to the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you, Bante. So now that we have come to the end of this evening's Dhamma sharing, um, let me just remind our listeners that this Sunday we will have Bante Dampe Vijitaratana, who will give an explanation in Mandarin on the fifth and the sixth verse of the Dhammapada. This is for our Mandarin speaking audience. This is a part of a four-part series. Bhante will be talking on the fifth and sixth verses of the Dhammapada in Mandarin this Sunday at 8:30 p.m. So with that, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Bhante Suseela for taking time off and to be sharing his Dhamma knowledge with us. And on behalf of the Committee of Management and the monks of the Buddhist Mahavihara, thank you, Bhante. And also to our sponsors this evening, and also to all our listeners who have been tuning in to us live here at the Buddhist Mahavihara's Facebook page. Thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you this Sunday as well as the following weeks. Where we have a number of very erudite monks and able monks who will be speaking on different subjects in for the whole of December. So good night and have a pleasant evening. Sadhu.